Good day, lovely people. I hope you all are doing well. Welcome back to another Cup of Joy with Liz and Lane. We are circling back around to the physical well being sphere, my favorite non performing. Although I will say, Lane, I had a little aha yesterday that I think I'm actually doing better in the sphere than I give myself credit for.
Yeah.
We've talked many times about the idea of small wins and many of these wins not necessarily having to be the traditional intentional exercise or intentional eating a certain way or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but but uh I, I i have implemented quite a few quote unquote small wins that I've been doing more and more of. So I was realizing yesterday I probably need to check myself in my inaccurate assessment of how I'm doing in this sphere. Because I
Yeah.
just continuously see like I definitely can do a lot better comparatively, but I think I'm doing better than I realize.
Yeah. And you
So
and you
anyway,
do consistently
yeah,
talk about how this isn't your sphere and this isn't the
yeah,
place where you
yeah,
are like putting energy and like over like obviously like some of that is true, but also like it's valid to like check your own the way you like talk about it to yourself
yep,
because that
yep.
can start becoming the truth without you even realizing it.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I got to think about like I think I told you. I don't know if we talked about this on here, but I actually got my I did my annual like super deep blood
Yeah.
work, and I'm actually better in every single area
Yeah,
this
that's
past
pretty
year than
cool.
the year before. So I'm like, well, so we got to give credit for some of that, even if I'm not sure exactly how the hell we got there.
Yeah,
There's
you did
got to be
something.
something going well, and I do think there are some of these smaller, less obvious parts have to be part of that. So
Yeah, you
anyway,
did
welcome
something
to a cup
right.
of joy, where we keep it real about our struggles and challenge ourselves to make sure we're celebrating the wins. We are
Yeah.
in my category for most improvement, but I am elevating, and that is physical well-being. And Lane, what is it that we shall discuss today?
Yeah, today, we're talking about how physical health is a difficult area for a lot of us. And so to
Sigh.
yeah, just
Enter
to
sigh.
piggyback on what you just said, I mean, even though, you have expressed now that you're doing pretty well and that you've seen some progress and especially with like getting actual blood work, it's like, oh, like I'm seeing the results right here that
Evident.
I'm yeah, that I'm doing okay. But I think what the point is that most of us can at least admit that we might be falling a little bit short on what we know we should be doing or what we want to be doing ideally for our physical health. And most of us have a higher level of physical health to achieve that we just aren't. And I think that this conversation is really about the why behind that. Why are we not getting to that level of physical health that we know we can get to, that all of us have within us to achieve? And I think you know there's many reasons behind it, and I think primarily like we're going to talk about the mindset but behind it, that we all kind of like we have different reasons, but I think there's like a one kind of like tie between it, that's like we all are struggling with a similar kind of way of thinking about physical health. And I think um
Not so obvious.
it's not so obvious. And I
Mhm.
we like to tell ourselves that it's certain things such as like, oh, we don't have enough time to do this, or it's too expensive to try this new diet, or like, it's so hard to get to the doctor to address this thing. Like, those are valid. We're not saying that it's not valid. We'll probably explore some of that more, but there's also like some other stuff underneath it that when we unpack this and actually like talk it through, it might kind of like free you up to think about this differently and pursue physical health in a way that you might not have before. So, Liz, how do you want to kick us off with some of these things that we like to tell ourselves about physical health that are valid, like I said, but maybe not as big or um, as much of a barrier as we like to give them credit for?
Yeah, so this particular episode was inspired by just a personal aha I had
Mhm.
recently, and that is the tendency to either ignore or explain away certain physical health related symptoms or ailments or experiences we're having. And also the fact that in many cases, if we were to just pause and like reroute from that, there in many cases are some really easy wins we could be having. But because we're normalizing that situation, we really essentially submit ourselves to it, like that it's just how it is. And I will give you all some examples. The one that came up to me the most, as I've shared with you all in other cup of joy episodes recently, I did this hormone replacement therapy recently, and would have never even thought to do it, except that I know someone whose wife is a nurse, and he and his wife both get these treatments because it's part of what she does for a living. And they're telling me how great it is, and I was like, something to consider. But for me, specifically on the sex drive component of it, I really had like this massive like halt in that element of my life when COVID hit. So at the time, logically, I explained to myself, oh, this is something to do with the fact that the entire world got disrupted, and therefore I'm experiencing that in some way that's manifesting, right? So
Mhm.
obviously it made sense, right, at that time to implement that explanation for myself. And I do believe at this time, I still believe that certainly had an impact, right? But what I'm realizing is that I never went and revisited that after the shutdown was over, right? To say, is that still a valid explanation? Well, maybe that's not accurate. I did revisit it, but then I was like, oh, that's still a thing. But I've been working on this doctorate, right? Which, oh, stress probably explains it.
You
I'm
explained it away in
tired.
a new
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, and I'm tired and I'm fried and I'm unmotivated, right?
Mhm.
And so explanation there, like moving on to that explanation, right? So then moving on, and I saw some shift, like some improvement in like getting back into a level of at least interest, because like when I wasn't even thinking about sex, like it wasn't even crossing my mind. And prior to this, mind you, I was in my prime, I was living my best life in this area, right? And so um and then of course, being a business owner, like there's always a hustle and grind and a busyness about my life, right? So like at some point, while that is certainly an explanation for things, if we're in a valid one, right? If I'm not careful, it becomes the explanation for everything. This is combined with the fact that I'm in my nearly mid 40s now, right? And that you can damn near explain any potential physical health ailment as aging, right? We're just getting older, because those of us who are seasoning know that the shit just shows up, and you're like, my hip hurts. And that seems to be a regular thing now. Or, I just can't quite remember the way I used to. Or, I'm just kind of more tired. That's just how it is now. And so I think the aging explanation is a really dangerous one, because again, these all fully make sense and they probably have something to do with. But if you look, you can find examples, plenty of examples of folks who are aging and or much more seasoned, who are living their best lives with as it relates to energy, sex, or anything else that is related to physical health, right? And so as I was kind of processing this, and then so I've gotten this first treatment, and of course I go back, we get the blood work done, and my testosterone numbers are like massively higher than they were, and they're actually where they should be, right? And so she's like, how, what do you think? And I'm like, well, now look how I flip it, right? So now I'm like, well, I actually do feel better. I feel like I have a little more energy. I do feel like my mood's better. I'm thinking about sex more. I'm enjoying sex more. But there's a lot of other things going that may explain it. And I can't say for sure it has to do. I
Yeah.
can't say for sure that has to do with this because there are other good things going on. You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the challenges that you can never know for sure. This is like a
Yeah.
movie. Your whole human reality is literally like a moving like part,
Yeah.
right? In
Right.
and
Right.
of itself. So you can't accurately assess, but I think the point here is that I think we can really like get into the habit of like falling into the explanation that we feel like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then like that's it. And so I'm looking at the amount of elevation I'm having that I must attribute to at least partially to this hormone replacement therapy. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, had it not been for me just happen to
Yeah.
be in a friendship with someone who mentions this, I could see myself just assuming this is how it now is
Yeah.
and either trying to address it, but doing it in a way that doesn't really allow me to explore all the potential options,
Right.
or not exploring any options and just saying that this is just now how it is. And again, in this particular case, I could have explained it through the challenge I was having through COVID, through the fact that I was in the PhD, through the fact that I'm a business owner, through the fact that I'm aging, or through the fact that I'm a woman. All things that, at least a few of those things are never going to change because as far as I know, I'm going to die a woman. I'm I'm going to, you know,
Continue to
still
age.
right.
Yeah.
Still be a business or like all these things are
Yeah.
probably, you know what I mean? And so then I had this other aha this morning, Lane, because I'm in my Florida location at this time. And like this is so simple, right? So I have a slow draining sink in my Columbus home.
Yeah.
And in this home, I do not. And I was just basking in the glory of how when I was brushing my teeth this morning, there was no slow drain.
Water.
I thought
Yeah.
this that there is no slow drain. And then I thought to myself, how simple could it be for me to just go to the store and get the thing,
Yeah.
right? That could address this slow drain more than likely. But I actually, and then I thought about it. I was like, I think I've told myself that either A, I don't have time, and or B, it might be more major than that. And I don't even want to go down that road right now. And so I haven't attempted anything to deal with the slow drain
It's a good
in a
metaphor.
bio, right? Because like
Yeah.
I made all these answers up in my head, and I had this natural tendency to in this case, the solving the problem is to just ignore it and or validate that it must be existing and there's nothing that I could or should do about it. And so
Right.
that really was the inspiration for this conversation to say, huh, we have this thing. And so, Lane, we talked about this in prep to think about it, applying it to physical well-being. But this morning I realized this is this, I think we may do this a lot more in physical, or maybe not. I don't know. But it's a thing that we do where we
Yeah.
kind of just explain away stuff, and as a result, like we literally can be missing out on simple solutions and missing out on a much better way to enjoy life in real life by just challenging ourselves not to do this thing where we answer the question of or diagnose the reason,
Yeah.
and it be in a way that there really isn't a solution. So now we're just going to normalize it. So hopefully that explains to you all the spirit and the focus of
Spirit.
this
Yeah.
conversation, which, for me, because I do this for a living and I just live this life, it's very rare that I have these big ahas. But so this is one. So I'm all excited because I got like a new big aha. So
Yeah.
Lane, I'm interested for you. I think for me, because of the aging component that you're not quite experiencing just yet, I'm
Yeah.
assuming it comes up more for me, but maybe not, as I realized this morning that this is there's a lot of ways in which this shows up.
Yeah. I think, I mean, just to the point you just made, like, does it show up more in physical health? I would argue that it actually shows up in every sphere for
Mhm,
everyone all the time. But this conversation obviously is more about physical.
mhm.
But for me, I can relate more to the concept in other spheres. I won't get into it right now, but we have discussed like in other episodes what like the way that I approach my physical health is like very different than the way you do, and almost like
'Cause you're winning in the sphere.
it is like it's
Mhm.
a strong
It's a
sphere
strong
for
sphere for
me.
you. Mm-hmm.
So I don't have, and again, yeah, to your point, like I don't have the aging component right now, and
Mm-hmm.
I do feel like I I can't necessarily provide like a personal example of this right now, but that's also I know that I struggle with this mindset in other areas, so I can also like very much
Well,
relate
do share
to.
one of those examples though, because I think
Yeah.
even though we're focused on physical well-being, and we'll bring it back to that, I think
Yeah.
being able to think about it through the context of a broader context, because we
Okay.
also talk about the intersection of each of our spheres.
Right, right.
And in any, if you're a Joy Society member, or are in any of our courses, coaching sessions, whatever, we always talk about
Yeah.
the intersection of, and really every solution we offer, you can find that the core component to the solution can be applied in other ways
Sure.
or other spheres
Sure.
and also help elevate results. So do share one of those other ones, because I
Okay.
also think
Yeah.
because sometimes I think if it's an area if it's a sphere you're struggling in, it may be harder to get the context of what we're talking about. Where if it's one that you're not struggling in, it may, or if,
Yeah.
for other folks who aren't struggling in physical, but they are in another sphere, it may, enlighten
Let me
them,
click.
and
Right.
we're not going to
Right.
limit ourselves by adding value to people only in the sphere we're talking about. So give us
No,
some
you're right.
examples here.
And it is interesting because like even just this little aha moment for me is like when I was kind of preparing for this conversation, I honestly like didn't relate very much to the things that I was like researching, and the concept of like not having enough time, or it being too expensive, like those kind of things for me, right, aren't really hitting for me in physical.
Mhm,
Like I don't tell myself those things. I tell the
mhm,
opposite. Like I feel like I have time to do, like it's always a
mhm,
priority for me. So
mhm,
like, but I now that we're talking about like how this general idea and this general way of like speaking about things in our life does come up for me, I would say like a good example would be in the relational sphere. Like
mhm,
um I would say like my relationship with my partner, like I've discussed like we have an awesome relationship, but like there are struggles that we've had, and there are times when I can see certain things coming up that relate to some like issue that we know we have as a
mhm,
couple, not to
mhm,
get too deep into what that
mhm,
is. I mean, we all,
mhm,
if you're in a relationship with someone, whether it's friendship, family, like,
mhm,
there might be some pain points, and
mhm.
there are times where I notice that like those things are coming back up, but it's much easier for me to just be like, things are busy right now. Like we just got a new puppy like a few days ago. And like, it's, if I mean, that's like a very present example, but like, you know, it's just, we don't have time. Like things are going on. Like, I don't really want to like open the can of worms that like, if I, start talking about this again, like maybe we'll go down like a bad path, and like, we'll have to, deal with the consequences. So like, you were saying with the physical health, it's like, we're afraid to like investigate a little bit deeper sometimes
Mhm,
because we like are afraid of what we'll find like
mhm,
physically. And I think relationally that's a thing. Like if we were afraid to like actually go there sometimes
mhm,
because we're
mhm.
afraid that it might open some painful
Cause some
memories, or
disruption. Yeah. Mhm,
cause some disruption. And that's like a big, that exact concept is actually like a big area of growth within my relationship with my boyfriend. And that's something that we've struggled with over the course of like years, is
mhm.
just being able to not let that fear of opening the door to some deeper
The
scary
Pandora's
thing.
box.
Yeah, it's like not letting that fear stop us from actually like having the conversations, because like whenever we do, we grow from it and we're better for it. But like, and it's that fear. And again, it's always easier once we do. We're like, oh well, we should have just had that talk like weeks ago before it got to this point, or like, you know what I mean? So
Mhm,
it's the same thing with this physical health conversation, because we all want to experience, like, I mean, I think we all want to experience like a better health, or good health. And I think the idea of like what is physical health, just like this feeling of just being healthy and like feeling good as a result of like our health. And I think that we all do want that. But I think, and again, like in our other spheres, we do want, like, I want to feel good in my relationship. And I
mhm,
think but there's these like mental blocks almost that
Mhm,
we just get into this pattern too. It's like it's familiar to tell ourselves these things. It feels easier, but in reality, like we are, I believe, making it harder for ourselves by like subscribing to these notions of I don't have time. I don't it's too much work, it's too overwhelming, it's too expensive. I mean, like even everything, all of these issues, like you can tell yourself that. I'm sure you can think of something in your life where you're telling yourself that right now.
Yeah, and I think in what I wanted to really double down on in this conversation is going a little bit beyond those explanations, because those are
Mhm.
common and there is some realness to it. But the
Yeah.
concern that I'm really wanting to highlight is that the normalization
Mhm.
of the tendency to normalize a problem. So in the relationship
Mhm.
sphere, the example would be we argue all the time and that's just how it is.
Yeah.
Or in the parenting sphere, it may be like my kid doesn't talk to me and that's just part of them being this age,
Or
right?
the emotional, I just have anxiety and that's why I
Exactly.
don't sleep well.
So
Or
that's
yeah.
yeah. So that's what I'm really wanting to pull out and pull highlight in this conversation is that outside of the you don't have time and the it might be too expensive or whatever, it is this challenge of us normalizing whatever in our lives. In this case, we were talking about physical well-being, but I'm realizing this really does show up in every other area. And interestingly, I guess to your point that it's in the other areas, I have taught on how, in even my book, "You Survive Now What," like the idea is that when I first came up with that concept of survivor to aliver, it's like this normalization of surviving is problematic, and you see it even in I think the most obvious example of the really embracing this term of surviving is in the cancer world, right? Where it's like a badge of honor to survive. And clearly, don't get me wrong, like obviously to survive cancer is something to celebrate. But in that work that I do, I talk about elevating our goal to move from surviving to living again, or what I call being an aliver, right? Which is
Mhm.
not being defined by this historical experience, and not have our identity tied into this historical experience. And so,
Right.
this whole idea, even of holistic success, is that let's aspire for more. Let's define a aspiration that
Right.
has much more to offer. What were you going to say, Lane?
Yeah, I have this is not in our script.
I think
I
we're
just
fully off script at this point.
I
So,
know, right? We always are. But like I'm thinking too, like just I'm wondering your thoughts on the idea that like sometimes people actually need the reminder to accept what is and not always feel like it needs to be fixed. And I feel like that's where like that's like an important piece of this conversation too, because like I don't want people to think like every struggle that you have, it's like you're just limiting yourself and you can get past it if you just believe kind of thing. Like I don't want to convey that. And I feel like
yeah.
I just I don't know what you I know you probably have something to say about this, but like I feel like I fall into that too much too in the physical health area is like every small thing, it's like, if I like I don't even have that barrier of like I don't have enough time. It's like I'm noticing a thing, I'm gonna address
Yeah,
this. I
because
need
you're
to do
you're
this.
obs- you're on the obsessive end of this, right?
Yes. So
So,
like I do think, but it's relevant because I feel like there is value accepting accepting what's real and what's happening for you and not feeling the kind of like incessant need to fix everything and to also like be able to sit in some stuff because like even just the relational thing like I can't go every day trying to address every moment like that something comes up with Colton. Like it's like we need to be able to know when to sit in the that feeling and then
absolutely.
know the time when it's appropriate to actually address that. And that's another like learning that I've had to go through with the relational side. And I know that like with the physical, it's similar too. So I don't know where that
Yeah.
piece fits in for you.
Yeah, this actually ties into what we teach in our True Success module, which is a really, if I don't say so myself, a
It's pretty good.
really awesome and deep dive. It's 3 hours of recorded content on the 7 steps to true success. And in those steps, we take folks through first identifying the problem, assessing what's going on to accurately identify whether or not there even is a problem, and if so, what is it?
Yeah.
So as soon as you said that, Lane, you said sometimes it's good to just accept. All the time it's good to accept, because no matter
Yeah.
what is going on, the first step to enjoying life in real life and truly being successful in all you do and in your whole life is accepting whatever is, because what is. So you
Yeah.
start with acceptance, because when you don't, now you're trying to battle what is. And newsflash, no matter how awesome you are, you do
Yeah.
not have the power to change what has already happened. If it
Yeah.
is, then that means it is as of right now, right? And then the next step is to say, so if I've concluded there is something going on here, then my next question is, what of it, if anything, am I in control of?
Mm-hmm.
Because like there are scenarios in life that you are not in control of. Like it's not something for you to even be able to influence. And therefore, expending your energy on things and quote unquote problems that you can't even do anything about,
Mm-hmm.
or at least the components of it
Right.
that you can't do anything about, is really an act of facilitating additional stress,
Yeah.
strain, and worry in your life, because hello, you can't do anything about it, right?
Yeah, and that's
So
really
then
what
you're shifting
anxiety
to,
is like
yeah,
thinking that you can control things that you can't.
exactly. So
Yeah.
then from there, it's whatever it is I can do something about, how do I go about it, which includes when, to your point on the relational side, is it now? Because there are scenarios in a relationship
Yeah.
where now is not the time, or is it ever, right?
It might
So
not ever be. Yeah, that's
exactly,
actually a valid
exactly.
point too. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
we're clearly off script, because this is just a lesson in how
Yeah.
to assess and address life
But it's
challenges.
valid
But
with this
yeah, but
conversation.
bringing it
Yeah.
back to this point
Yeah.
of the accurate assessment and pulling that in, I would present that in my example of my scenario, the inaccurate assessment is where we can get off track, because that's right at the beginning. So if
Mhm.
you're inaccurately assessing what's even going on, then that means that everything else you decide and do from there is off,
Yeah.
right? So in
Right.
my case, bringing it back to the physical health
Yeah.
example, right? And I'm not saying that I should have, at the time that COVID hit, should have been exploring anything further. In my mind, I look at that and say that made sense to do,
Yeah.
and that, that's where we went, right? But
Yeah.
as that unfolded and this issue, these symptoms remained in place, what should have been happening, and really what was happening, to some extent, was an ongoing assessment to reassess, to say, COVID shutdown is over. These symptoms are still here. It
Yeah.
doesn't seem to me logical that that would be then the explanation for an accurate assessment of why that stuff is still happening, right? So
Right.
then it's like going into starting to consider other possibilities. And I would say that in cases where there's this forever explanation, i.e., aging, or i.e., because you're a woman or because you're a man, or those things that are forever, I would argue that we should probably steer ourselves away from allowing ourselves to only explore that as a reason, because that would always be valid, and therefore like become a barrier for you to discover
Right.
any other or additional explanations, because it could be more than one explanation. And in this
Right.
case, do I think that aging, being a woman, COVID, the PhD were all part of, at least to some extent, those symptoms and realities? Yes.
Right.
However, what we now know is that they weren't enough of an explanation to make it valid and make it a good idea for me to submit myself that to reality that from now on I'm going to be on the struggle bus, and apparently the season of living my best sexual life is over because I'm a woman and because I'm older and because I'm this, therefore you see what I'm saying? So the part about submitting down, so that goes back to what I just taught, which could be applied to your scenario on the relationship side, the accurate assessment. And really, this is a practice of living in an ability to in an ongoing way, not obsessive, because you can take this too far, where you in an ongoing manner assess what you think you know to be true.
And just being open, I think, to like new information.
The fact that every day, in every moment in the day, each encounter you have imprints just a little tisp on who you are and how you think. And so as a result, new information, new perspective shows up, which could gift you with something you never realized before. And your existing truth, as awesome as it was at the time that you submitted to yourself, this is true, could actually be upgraded to a new truth because you have new experience, new insight. Right. And as a result, like you have some edits and tweaks, and sometimes throw that whole joint in the trash because holy crap, I just had this really big epiphany, right? That allows me to think differently. Right. This is how I've gotten to the level of success that I have holistically, right? Is this ongoing journey that I take myself on as a lifestyle, not in an obsessive way again, but in a way where I am. And see, this is how I'm even coming to this cup of joy to say we should talk about this, because what am I doing?
Right.
I'm living in a space of openness where I'm open to learn new things. I'm open to put my current truth on the stand, if you will, to be tried, to see guilty or not guilty, right? And so it might have been not guilty before, meaning this is the way, right?
Yeah.
With this new insight, by me staying in this state of openness for new ideas and new concepts and new knowing to enter my life, I can have, and I facilitate a space for new ahas, right? That then allow me to elevate in any one area of life for me, because of the physical well-being sphere being one that I can grow in. I am experiencing this aha and applying it in the physical well-being to say, I need to start thinking about how I'm thinking about. Dwayne always says, think about thinking, right?
Yeah.
I need to think about how I'm thinking about and defining what it means to be physically healthy and how I explain to myself any struggles or wins that I'm having. Because this was a perfect example and so now, mind you, the hormone piece, further doubling down on all this, the obvious thing is impact on your sexual realities, but it actually impacts your energy. It impacts hair growth. It impacts all kinds of other things. So what I have been thinking about, I might be low on testosterone and therefore have that be part of the explanation for low energy, which had nothing to do with sex, right? Or sex drive or whatever. So again, the point is, because this is a very detailed example, the overall point is the ability and to challenge ourselves to not fall into the trap of settling for an explanation that would indicate this is just how it is. Anytime you're filling it in with this is just how it is, this is how it's going to be, you are limiting yourself from the possibilities. Now, on the flip side, getting back to your point, Lane, for those of you who find yourself in obsessive states, right? And it could be about physical health because you don't have that in the physical health sphere, but you have it in others, or maybe no, take it back. You have it in the physical health sphere. So while I'm on struggle bus side, you're slightly on the obsessive side. We both need to come close to the middle. To your point, the acceptance of, and to me, it's not about acceptance. It's about the important reality that if you're someone who's committed to personal and professional growth, which you're probably not here if you're not, because that's who we talk to, that there's a difference between having a commitment towards growth and well-being and having an obsessive approach to life, which is laced with perfectionism and anxiety-laden thinking that something bad's going to happen if I don't handle this thing, to
Right.
where you make your lifestyle basically an experience of being on the surgery table. And I've talked before about there's a reason why, even if you do need two new knee replacements, ain't nobody operating on two knees in one day. Why? Because we cannot and should not be on the operating table. When I say operating table, I mean personal and professional development. You shouldn't always be in a state of trying to fix and develop something. Then
Right.
that's different than an overall state of just being in a state of I can always learn and grow, because that's life, and life is allows us to do that. I'm talking about the point where I'm like working on something. Sometimes there are seasons to work on something, and there are seasons to bask in either what you've worked on or just be alive, just be enjoying and living, right?
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
so learning the difference between and the line, like where you cross over from growing towards something to applying perfectionist, anxiety ridden obsessiveness about a thing. Those are two different things. And folks can confuse, oh, no, I'm just always developing. So, how would you know?
Yeah.
You may be wondering, if anxiety is a regular part of your life, then there's your sign.
Yeah.
Right? If it's inspired from worry, we missed it. Because the goal isn't to live in worry so that we can make sure we know all the things that we might need to work on so we can be better. Because that, if you think about it, it's counterproductive, because what I'm trying to do in any improvement is that live a better life, right? If in making my life better, I have brought anxiety and worry in, then I'm doing the opposite.
Right.
So you might be physically healthier, but if your anxiety is maintaining at a high level because you're physically healthier, then you missed it. Your solution really isn't a solution, because, okay, you've gotten physically healthier, but your anxiety higher. And Lena, you of all people know, if your anxiety is high, then that would say, if we could run some physical tests, we would see how you are actually tearing down your physical health as a result of living in a state of anxiousness every day. So that is not helpful. Congratulations on your 372nd day of eating well, or your 560 a day of exercising, or you know what I mean? Like whatever win you're having in your top success sphere, if that's laden with stress and anxiety over continuing to win. I'm thinking about my bonus daughter, who is nearly a 4.0 student at all times, however, is anxious as hell all the time. I would rather her have a 3.5 and not be anxious than a 4.0.
Yeah.
And be a hot mess every day and not able to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And depressed, right?
Right.
So this goes back to some of the things we talk about in the Joy Society and some of the work we do of what is success? How do we define success?
Mm-hmm.
So this is why the holistic part. Now you see how when in your case, if you're only focusing, oh, I'm winning in physical, but we go over here to emotional and we see I'm anxious every day, then we missed it. And that's why we show up the way we do with this holistic success model, because if you're only looking at one area, then more than likely you're hashtag winning in one and hashtag struggle buzz in the other.
Yeah.
Because they're tied together. So here we now circle around into this very unscripted cup of joy to the aha of it all, to say, and this is why holistic focus is so critical. This is why if you're a member, we're going to make you get some content about the stuff you call yourself not thinking about or caring about. Because typically when we're not focused in an area, that's a sign probably that we have some room.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just not really a big thing for
it's
me.
not my thing, or like,
yeah, okay. Right.
And I mean, I feel like a lot of, we can probably do another whole episode on that
for all of our stuff, right?
On that idea, like, oh, spirituality just isn't my thing. Well, there's a reason that it's an equal part of the 8 spheres. And, so I guess like in closing, I just wanted to touch on that too, like the ripple effect of like, when you are doing well in one area, if it's at the expense of another, then you're not then yeah, you're missing the
And
point.
that's
But
not really
like,
winning.
but on the opposite end of that, sometimes doing well in one area can bring the other areas up with it. If you're coming from a place of like not coming from a place of worry and anxiety, you're coming from a place of truly, like all the steps that we just talked about, you assessed, and this is something that you have control over, and that this is something that you want to do to improve your health and to feel better. Like, if it's coming from that place, then more than likely it will improve other areas. Like, for example, your physical health. Like, if you are like you just mentioned, Liz, if you ignored that forever and just like didn't address that problem, like that's going to have some detrimental effects later on to your relationship, to your emotional health,
To my business and career success.
to your business
Yeah,
and career, to your finance.
absolutely.
Like, but now that you've given yourself permission to look at this as something that can be, that you have an open mind to look at some possible solutions and to figure out, what might actually help you feel better or do better in this area. Like, now your relationship might be thriving, or now your finances might be in a better place because you have that extra boost of energy that you were talking about, or like, you're feeling better every day, so you're working harder. Like, they're all connected. And I think that, yeah, it's important to, anytime that we do one of these talks, we always try to like talk about how it relates in other spheres than just the one that we're talking about today, because everything is connected. So I feel like that the aha for me of this one was like, okay, even when we were talking about physical health, and it's not something that I like necessarily like relate to personally right now, like it's not something that is just irrelevant to me, because it's all so connected.
Yeah, and actually, an aha I would add, Lane, and I'm thinking about how do we make sure we incorporate this into the stuff we do in the community, is, and because it made me think about the emotional intelligence work I do and the assessment. When you do that assessment, all of the skills of emotional intelligence are good, right? There's no time in which we're going to teach you to lower one. But what the assessment does show is imbalance. And when you're too high in one skill, and that tends to then be matched with being very low in another, which then results in problematic realities. An example might be you're really high in confidence, but if you're low in empathy, then that means you basically coming off like an egotistical asshole, right? Because like you're feeling yourself, which is great, like you feel good. We don't want that to come down, but we need this empathy to come up, because you're coming off to others like you don't care about them, because you got this really high confidence, but you're struggling with the empathy part. So in your case, Lane, the aha right here is that if you have a sphere you're winning in, if you feel like you're super winning in it, we might need to look at, are you winning at the expense of another sphere? And even when I first got into the EI stuff and got certified to do it, I was like a proud emotional intelligence ambassador. Like, my EI is high AF. But I started realizing that when certain skill sets of those were so high, there was actually an issue. And I was not able to see that, because I just think, who wouldn't understand that it's important to understand others and know your own emotion, right?
Yeah.
But when that's not paired with some reality testing and some problem solving and some balance of all of that stuff, then you got a little bit too much there. And so again, not that I need to lower those, but what were the ones I needed to strengthen,
right?
So that the strength of having that high rating doesn't have an asterisk next to it.
Right. Where you can actually embody and feel good in those strengths then.
Exactly.
And
that it doesn't become a liability, because, and I think, to me, that's the big aha of this entire cup of joy, because we talked about both ends. We started off with an intent to focus on how ignoring in this physical health realm could be problematic, but you brought into the picture the other end of that spectrum, which is obsessing. And so you call yourself winning in it, but either side, you're really not winning. And so for this and any other sphere, I would conclude with the suggestion that we need to ensure we have harmony, not balance, because balance has that kind of um, mythical reality that they're all going to be even, but harmony in which you aren't too heavy on the side of either obsessing over being strong in one area or ignoring
Yeah.
opportunities or normalizing problematic realities as just how it is.
Yeah.
So we hope that this rabbit hole slash aha episode was something that you could track with
Yeah.
and identify with. We look forward to hearing your feedback. If you are not a member, we encourage you to join, and we will see
We'll see
you
you
on the next
soon.
Cup of Joy. Take care.